was a professional landscape ecologist, did research and training for 40 years, and about 15 or 16 years ago I retired to this area. I live on the Salmon River, just below where the salmon flows out of Kennebec Lake. I did not know anybody here at all. I picked the ad out of the newspaper. I didn't even know where the nearest grocery store was at the time, but the land was what attracted me. When I first joined the Stewardship Council, it was called the South Frontenac Stewardship Council.
Okay.
And they had written down that we don't go north of 7. I tried to talk them out of that. And they also had an unwritten policy: we don't do lakes. We just do land.
Oh, really?
So there were a few things that caused me to get upset with that first council, and we reconstituted it when Brett Coleman came on the scene and sent it off in a much healthier direction. The federal government made the first mistake in sending settlers up all the settlers' roads, telling them that this was
right.
Great farmland, here's your axe and your shovel, go and survive.
Right.
And it did not work. We're still coming off that set of assumptions that, as far as Frontenac County is concerned, it's an agricultural paradise. Well, it's pretty good agriculture on the islands, right, and for a small way inland from the islands, but the rest of the county's riches are not agricultural.
No.
They're natural, and that's been neglected for way too long. That's rare. It's very valuable on the world stage, and somehow we can't bring our minds around to that. The private forest owners can't afford step one in managing their forest. Step one is to have a professionally trained tree marker come in and mark the trees that should
right.
be cut
right.
in this round of harvesting.
Right.
And most of the forest harvesting that's done, a lot of it, is somebody who's under pressure for cash flow. He's running short in cash flow, and he sells off some of his forest as a cash crop.
Right.
He doesn't have $500 extra. He doesn't want to take extra time, and nobody has ever sat down and explained to him what the long-term advantage would be in terms of an investment value of his forest.
Right.
He's looking at it in a very short-term way. Some guy drives up with a truck and a chainsaw and says, I'll give you X dollars for each truckload,
right.
and they turn him loose and he cuts whatever he wants. So your genetics goes bad,
right.
your distribution of size classes goes bad, and if we could just supply those guys with a little bit of help at that planning point, these guys have got a wealth of value up there, and they're not getting it.
Right.
My feeling is that it's the people on the land that are going to control its future, not regulations that are promulgated in Peterborough or Toronto. Those we've tried in the past, they haven't worked very well. All of the environmental problems that we have today were put in place under a set of regulations that had already been written. There's nothing in those regulations that says don't go down and rake up all the leaves along the shore. It's the fungal mat in the leaf litter that does most of the nutrient absorption, especially on bedrock.
Right.
So you import a bunch of neatnicks with urban habits and turn them loose
right.
under the current set of regulations, you're still going downhill. You'll find people here from the west end of Toronto, from Kingston, from Ottawa. The Kawarthas are up to the point that you can't buy anything decent for a reasonable amount.
Right.
Muskoka is filled. we're next. You've
Yeah.
got to try to guide it. It's going to happen,
Right.
and it's not bad. It's
Right.
it's just one of the options.
Right.
But it's bad if you don't pay attention to how you do it.
Right.
And so the people on the land need to be brought in on it, not to say not in my backyard, but to say how in my backyard.
Right. They have the same long-term interest. So you just need to, they need to understand before they start building what their long-term interest is.
They-
rather than telling them what they can and can't do.
They need some neighbors to come round and have a beer.
Right.
Exactly. And that way you can get it done, but you try writing exact regulations that will cover every guy's waterfront lot. There's no way you can write it at that level of detail, and who's going to enforce it?
You've been promoting the idea of a stewardship, a countywide stewardship plan, which is you're the primary and maybe
I
the sole
would make
control.
it. I would make it wider than that.
Right. What would a plan look like? I mean, what?
Well, I think it would try to offer advice to people on how best to accomplish their heart's desire without causing difficulty for the environment or for their neighbors. So if someone were trying to start a farm north of 7, it would be really helpful to them if the landscape planning would show them where there is a place that has accumulated a little bit of topsoil.
Right.
And it's almost surely going to be in a topographic depression. It's going to be small, but that's fine. We've got people around here who are using those small topographic depressions to earn a living.
Right.
And we've got that sort of thing. But if somebody goes out into a really bad place and tries to start to farm, a good land plan would have warned them not to do that.
Right.
You're going to lose your shirt if you go to this place. And a good land plan would do the very same thing with mining. It would redirect mining efforts away from interference with other activities.
Right.
And the classic example was on the Merriam in New Brunswick, where they put in and actually activated a heavy metal mineral mine that lasted only for a very short time, and somebody found the logbooks for the salmon clubs and looked back over those logbooks over time, and the salmon had produced something like 100 or more fold as much economic product as that mine did, but the mine contaminated a stream that fed into the Miramichi.
Right. So,
and knocked the salmon back. This was bad thinking.
Right. So it's
a good land use plan would necessarily have that kind of time-based evaluation.
Right.
And that's the only fair way to do it. You can't come along to these guys afterwards and say, undo everything you've done. You've got to be there and say, this is our concern and we see this as a way of getting around it. If you get there soon enough and are reasonable, there are a lot of people out there that will be reasonable with you.